Yeah, that's cool. That's really well said. I get so myopic and locked into like one thing. Like when I learned about high intensity training and the type of training that Dr. Ben Bokikio gives to his people and how they define exercise, I get so locked into that I want to do that myself. I want to do only that with my clients. And I forget the other components that there are other things that people like to do. You want to continue to make things fun and interesting and introduce variety, even though if it's not the most logical, best designed strength training program when you're incorporating some of those other things. And you're right, like you might be making some compromises, but overall, globally, people are not. I don't have anybody who's training to win marathons and half marathons. You know what I mean? Like it's not the biggest deal for me if I'm staying off of carbohydrates. I know it could cost me a little bit of performance in hockey, but like I'm playing a drop-in game once a week with my buddies. It's not like the biggest thing if I don't have the highest top-end performance. And I don't think it's a very big sacrifice to make sure my mental health, for example, stays really, really high. So I think it's a nice way to think about being a generalist, the way that humans are, and be good at lots of different things rather than just be great at like one or two things. So I love your approach there. You mentioned VO2 max. I'm curious to know, since that was the thing that I was doing in my entire career was measuring people on VO2 max. What have you learned about the importance of that number, and how are you tracking that number? Are you doing VO2 max tests themselves where they're actually measuring oxygen, or using predicted values based on devices that we have that give us really, really good predictions?
Yeah, I have not ever done a sophisticated test for VO2 max. I have a Garmin, and I figure that for my purposes, progress is really the only thing that I'm concerned with. So I
Right.
assume that, and even if if I didn't get a VO2 max, um, intuitively I would figure that if I'm doing the same distance and the same speed run under the same conditions, say humidity and heat, but my heart rate is now lower than it used to be, that I'm progressing in terms of my cardiovascular capacity. But when I see the VO2 max go up a point, certainly makes me happy. And I always qualify if I share my Garmin estimated VO2 max. I qualify that with the fact that I know it's not accurate. It's not just like a CGM, which measures your interstitial fluid, isn't telling you your absolute blood glucose reading. It's giving you an estimate that can be helpful. That's what you're getting with a Garmin VO2 max. But I definitely appreciate becoming having a larger capacity for running, being able to run further at the same time or further at a faster time. It's amazing what the body can do. Like and it's also amazing. It's amazing how far you can regress over the winter if you don't make a practice of doing it. Like I ran a half marathon last October, and I had been averaging 10,000 steps a day for 6 months. And for whatever reason, when November 1st came around, I slacked off like the whole winter long, and my capacity to run diminished greatly. And it took me probably probably 8 weeks to get back what I lost. And now I'm back where I was, and maybe even progressing further. Little lesson learned. Maybe this winter I will make a point of, getting out and running, even if it's cold, and even if it's dark out. I'll figure something out, and you learn as you go.
Did I hear you comment on another podcast that also in the off season, your nutrition wasn't as on point and you ended up gaining like 10 to 15 pounds?
I've gained. Um, yeah, I try to manage everything. Um, but yeah, I've gained 10 or 15 pounds from Thanksgiving to New Year's. The year before last was particularly brutal. I shared a lot of that publicly. I mean, um, it doesn't take much for someone that has a capacity to eat like I do to really pack on some pounds. And I worry about it a lot less when I try to eat good foods. I try not to worry about eating too much when I'm doing the exercise that I have committed to. If I'm running the distance, and I'm doing regular resistance training, and I've got good strength and muscle mass, and I gain a little weight, I don't finesse or obsess about it, but I try not to let too many things slide at one time. And there's a limit. Like I think at this stage with the muscle that I've built up, I initially went down to about, well, I say I lost 80 pounds. I initially went down even below that. Um, uh, but I realized that I probably had gone a little further than I wanted to. And that's when I started trying to build muscle back. And I did gain some muscle. So I think my optimal weight right now is probably between 205 and 208. So that would be about 70 pounds lighter than my high weight, but I've definitely added a good amount of muscle to my frame.
Yeah, you have. I can tell you that in person, meeting you in person, that you have quite a bit of muscle, which I wanted to ask you about as well. But I was asking you about the weight because oftentimes people miss this. When I was certifying other personal trainers to do VO2 max test, metabolic testing, it was a question that everybody would miss constantly. The VO2 max formula, the number that most people are used to seeing, is the milliliters of oxygen that you can take in every single minute. And that's what people think. Like, what is VO2 max? Well, it's the amount of oxygen you can take and deliver into your body, but they missed the third component of the formula. There's one more component, and that's another divided by it, and it's kilograms. And it's kilograms of your body weight, meaning that your VO2 is relative to your own body weight. So the two ways that you can make that number go better is to improve your cardiovascular efficiency by getting back into running, or to simply lower the denominator and put in a lower weight. Like if you weigh less, if you and I were doing the same thing and I weighed 20 pounds less than you, but we had the same lung capacity, my VO2 score would be higher because I've got the lower denominator. So you probably made an even bigger jump than you assumed if you didn't change the weight on your Garmin, and it just took your numbers based on a projected, amount of oxygen delivery and heart rate without taking in the weight component as well. And I think it's something that I think is interesting. And I think a lot of people miss when they say that VO2 max is the greatest number for longevity. You're also self-selecting people that weigh a lot less. If you weigh 400 pounds, it doesn't matter what your lung capacity is going to be. Your VO2 max is going to be super, super low. And so, as much as I want people to know, like, yeah, you got to improve your cardiovascular health and efficiency, and that's really important. But remember that the number is based on the number of your weight. And I know you know that, but I think it's interesting for the listeners who sometimes don't consider that component of it.
No, that's a great point. And yeah, and I probably I definitely don't adjust my Garmin from week to week. My weight, I don't even remember the last time I've adjusted it, and I don't even know if it's I don't even know what it's set for currently. It's probably around my 208 pounds. I'm a few pounds more than that right now, but but anyway, yeah, that's a great point. Let's see. I don't know what. Go ahead, Ed.
No, it's interesting. Not many people do change the weight in the Garmin, which means if you're getting better scores, you are like you know that is your. It's not based on weight that you're getting better scores. It's based on your aerobic efficiency. And
Right.
exactly what you said. This was the thing. Like if you came in and did a VO2 test with me, and I said, okay, here are your results. Let's go over all this. I want you to come back in 3 months and do this again. The number one thing I would be looking for is improvement, and our reports would show this in the chart. Is like, okay, last time you came in, your heart rate was 150. At this step of the test, we were 8 minutes in, the exact same protocol. You were running 6.1 miles an hour at a 1% incline. Well, guess what? You just did that same step on the same test on the same protocol, and your heart rate was actually 140. Or at heart rate 150, where you're running 6.1, now you're running 6.9. So that's an easy way that somebody could tell that they are making improvements. And so it's cool that you recognize that. And if nothing else, that's an easy way that if somebody had a benchmark run or ride or something, like I've got a ride by my house that I do on my bike that's 20 miles. And if it takes me much over an hour, I know my fitness is dropping off. And so you can kind of manage that way without having expensive tests or specialized equipment to be able to get it done.
I love these conversations, and I have these conversations with my wife. She's starting to pay a lot more attention to her heart rate. I think we both went out a few years ago when we started running. We were both running too fast. It was probably because of me, and she was miserable because she was trying to keep up with my unreasonable pace. And it wasn't because I was fitter than her. It was because I was um, pushing myself harder than I should have been, because I felt like there was some um, need to do that. And then I finally, after being lectured by the zone 2 fanatics for long enough, I finally did a little bit more research into it. And I, you know, I don't think that it's anyone else's business to tell you what you should be running at. But I did realize that, you know, and I learned this really well through training for the marathon, that if you do the miles that are prescribed for fitness program that you've signed on for, you do those miles that you previously weren't doing. You don't have to do them at any specific speed in order to see some dramatic gains. Like in an 18-week period, if you culminate with a 40-mile week, even if it's a relatively slow pace, your body is adapting and it's going to be fitter. And the fact, I mean, I'm no, you know, no amazing marathoner, but the fact that I was able to run 26.2 miles side by side with my wife, and do it at about a 10:35 pace, you know, was, you know, it's like, it's just mind boggling, because, you know, when I was 10 years earlier, I couldn't run a mile at a 10:30 pace. So to do that, you know, it's just incomprehensible the amount that your body will adapt to the
Totally.
pressure that you put on it.